Yeah.
Hello, welcome to the show. My name is Meta, your host, and here is some animatic arguments of asserting assertions with my good friend Roucceau. Meta.
Hey, man, it's good to be here. Happy to
Hey,
be here, actually.
I'm really excited to speak with you today, due to the fact that you have a very interesting mindset on life and a very beautiful mind. Uh, did you think of any topics that you'd like to discuss, or would you like to freeball it?
I guess I can bring up my idea. We could start off with my concept of the spheres of philosophy, as I call it. Remember? We were discussing
The
that at the party.
politicism.
Yes. So, a lot of people get politics all wrong, in my opinion. Uh, the modern contemporary look at politics is this idea of there's just whatever you're at, and it's always left or right. I find that a lot of liberals claim that conservatives aren't real Americans, and conservatives claim liberals aren't Americans, and then liberals are trying to bring about socialist policies, and conservatives don't. So we can move into that aspect about how um, incorrect both of them are. Actually, how incorrect most of the world kind of is in terms of politics. I'd say that politics is just in my opinion, is this the applied rule of like civilization, like the dynamics of civilization. Essentially, it's what government is. It's what influences government. The debate, between government. When you want to have the debate between politics, you need to debate the differences of ideas. So essentially, politics. I mean, it's a very vague term when someone says they don't like politics or whatever, and then you find that they like politics. Essentially, their viewing of politics is incorrect, right? A lot of liberals or conservatives, right, claim the other is not American, or the conservatives claim liberals are un-American. They're incorrect. They're not real Americans. And then liberals claim that capitalism is bad, and they're all just a bunch of greedy capitalists. Now here's where we can start, right? That aspect, right, of how a lot of the contemporary take it out to be, right? Uh, Liberalism is its own sphere, right? And that incorporates capitalism, uh, liberalism, secularism, individualism, that kind of stuff. Separation of state. Liberalism is that freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, kind of essentially the opposite of a lot of those monarchistic views, right? When it comes to these spheres, a lot of liberals like to claim that socialism is a part of liberalism, correct? A lot of the leftists here in the US, it seems like it's this it's almost like they're meant to be, correct? But I find that they've completely looked at it the wrong way. So their denial of capitalism and into taking, but their denial of capitalism and their a love of socialism is completely backwards in their own, philosophy. What I think is going on here is that Hegelian aspect of you have the thesis, which is like liberalism in this case, and then you have the antithesis, which is socialism. Now, that's the other sphere of this philosophy. Socialism, you have liberalism. Marxism is supposed to merge into creating socialism. When liberals claim socialist aspects are liberal, they're highly incorrect, in my opinion. And when a conservative claims liberals aren't liberal, or a liberal isn't an American, or some sort of weird, like some sort of perversion to the American ideal, I find that to be very, very ignorant, because the conservative himself is actually extremely close to the liberal in terms of their political viewpoints. So, a liberal, in terms of what a liberal should be, is someone who likes, secularism, freedom of religion, gender equality, secularism, racial equality. There's an international aspect, this kind of globalistic aspect to liberalism. Both the conservative and the liberal they both generally support, free trade, individual rights, civil rights, human rights. I guess capitalism. In reality, a lot of the liberals are some of the biggest capitalists I've ever seen in my life. So I'm going to say yes to that. But yeah, that's some of the biggest similarities they have. Now, if I were to bring up monarchy, right? Now, a lot of these liberals like to claim that the conservatives are Nazis, right? Sure, maybe socially you can claim these kind of similarities, but let's just say that the Nazis hated parking lots way more than any conservative hates. I'm just going to put that aspect out in that kind of the fascists had this kind of they had this eco-fascist mindset really towards the earth, and if a corporation that they found was very, very polluting or damaging to their environment and so on, or screwing over people, they didn't like that aspect. It was very controlled, like their businesses were very controlled. A conservative would not like that. A conservative would definitely not agree with that kind of aspect, so when it comes to social problems, you can find a lot of support in that in politics, right? People wanting to make a nice political change to the social norms of their country and so on, or perhaps they don't like a law or whatever. Okay, fair. Now there's people that don't really care about those kind of aspects, but those same people, right? Those are the as I call them, the go-getters, the archetype of the everyday man, right? They avoid generally large, open, they avoid the larger picture in life, right? They stick to themselves. But those same people care about politics because whenever something involves commerce, when it involves their taxes, when it involves their kids, they care. They care more than anyone else I can actually say. It's when it starts to impact them. But they fail to understand why it's impacting them or where this impact is coming from. Who caused this? They just think in a more simplistic terms that they can vote out certain concepts, or perhaps this politician who promises lower taxes is the solution to them, So it's just a cycle. So they themselves are involved in this in politics. They just don't. They're just like less triggered about it, I guess. People that care less about politics, but they're more caring about it when it impacts them. I would say that's the majority of people. Than when it comes to the ones who care overly about politics. Actually, wasn't it 50% of the country didn't vote? It doesn't matter to me. I don't care per se. I actually prefer them not to vote if they don't want to vote. Australia has a system where it forces everyone to vote, and I think that's also problematic as well. Americans have very little emphasis on history, as long as that, and the only history they care about is essentially American history, which is very, very small. And now, when it comes to, well, let me finish on that aspect. So, when it comes to the historical aspect, how Americans fail to understand history, they never, ever have a great emphasis on historical studies here in the U.S. They don't have a big, the degree isn't that special. Now, in Europe, historians are far more appreciated, for instance, and all over the world. But over here, it's kind of a joke degree,
One thing I would see as a con towards meritocracy would be that maybe people that are in the position to learn more will have the ability to control those that don't have the ability to know more. And what's your thoughts on that?
Taking advantage of the ignorant, right?
Right.
That that's a problem that's existed since the dawn of man till now. It's
Yes.
always going to exist, and the only thing I can say is a stoic approach, like what the Greeks would say. And honestly, make yourself smarter. I know it's hard. I know a lot of people say, "Well, you can't make yourself smarter." I would honestly argue that and say that you can. All it takes is reading and comprehension.
Well,
Like
okay.
for me,
How about like genetic factors? Like, let's say someone's mentally handicapped. Are they
that's a different. Yes, of course. Now, but I would say the average human in this instance.
okay? So
Now,
if you were born into just bad luck, like having mental disability, it are we allowed to take advantage of said individual then in that case?
no, I don't think so. I don't think that would be the case. Um, we always have had this care for our most vulnerable. Usually, with American or with human history, we have even Neanderthals. Man, they were taking care of old and weak, members of their groups that were pretty much unable to hunt, and
Well,
uh,
so they were taking care of those old and weak that were in their group, but not
and their group. True,
not like
of
outcast within their society, right?
course. true. They really, I mean, if anyone had any genetic illnesses back then, they were probably, not that they were killed or anything, they would probably have been killed by nature itself.
How they tend to outcast those that don't fit within that particular group of society.
Yeah, the Nazis were pretty big into biopolitics, if I remember clearly.
I think so. I agree. They're
Yeah.
pretty big
So,
into
now when it comes to biopolitics and how we view, wasn't Michel Foucault big into that?
that.
Like
I
he
think it was
discussed a lot on
Foucault
that.
that invented or coined the term biopolitics.
Was it? Did he know? Did he notion the term? I thought it was someone else, to be honest.
I think it was Foucault. But this is just off the top of my head.
Did he not come up with the term biopower? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Oh, maybe it's biopower. Maybe I'm getting it mixed up.
Yeah, it is biopower. I'm looking at it right now. It's
Okay, yeah.
biopower.
So what's your opinions on that?
I think we have to look at the permissibility. We can't just be, this is what it is. It's that would be way too nonchalant. Now, that's what people generally want you to do, right? The side that's like, all right, well, it's now equaled out. Well, it is what it is, right? Generally, people want that. But human beings, I don't think, generally work that well in that sense, where things that upset them, they can sit well with that, So what do I think is going to happen? Yes, homosexuality and heteronormative people, right? So there's always been this like balancing act. Let's talk about this in history. So I'm a big history buff. I actually was going to be a historian before philosophy, especially with the Romans. Now, a lot of people again felt it's so funny to me. Now, you'll be like, oh, they're like conservatives will always say there weren't gays in the past or whatever, right? And then a lot of liberals will go straight to the Romans and Greeks. They had gays, right? But then they fail to understand or realize both of them, both the opposites of what they're saying, right? Like the Greeks and the Romans were gay. Okay, yeah. And then they went straight because they then converted. All that that promiscuity of the Romans went away. So did the Greeks, Like everyone knows gay people. Like if like conservatives always make fun of the Greeks and Romans by calling them gay Europeans or whatever, or the Greeks are a gayer version of the Romans or whatever. The Romans are a straighter version of the Greeks. That's what I always hear from people. Now the Romans, yeah, they were gay at one point. They're pretty damn gay and perverted. All the shit they were doing. It wasn't just they weren't just gay. There was a lot of things to the Romans that made them very interesting, in my opinion. But a lot of gay people like to point to that aspect that the Romans were gay, the Greeks were gay, and then again, they're not gay anymore, or they weren't. Even before they weren't gay, they got gay to a certain point. That aspect, that lifestyle that came into them, that desire, or that lust, whatever. That came about them. I don't know if it came through the Greeks, to be honest. I should really look into that aspect. Now, for me, it's such a weird concept. Now, with conservatives, right, like they say gay people didn't exist in the past. Like, okay, yeah, in the 1940s, but then they fail to understand that there was like underground gay brothels and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Right, because they weren't allowed to be gay, right? Like they weren't allowed to be
Exactly.
open about it.
And now here's what I might say is quite an interesting concept here. This is where I get the idea that being gay is kind of a social concept. Dun, dun.
It was at this moment my roommate burst into my room, acclaiming that I forgot about a kickback that I promised to attend to. Unfortunately, I had to put a tab immediately right when my guest had a very interesting thing to say. This will be a part 1 of a 2-part series in this podcast. Until next time, your host, Meta. Meta.